You want to tell better stories faster and with more conviction, and you no doubt have heard how AI can help you do just that. You might be in journalism, marketing, PR, or just anywhere you're paid to communicate, then learning how to use it could be your new superpower. But there is so much noise out there, and let's face it, some of it's not just artificial, it's downright misleading, because when you rely too heavily on AI without understanding how it works, you risk losing the very thing that makes your story resonate, your human voice. So if you want to lead the storytelling revolution instead of getting steamrolled by it, then you need to treat AI as your new creative storytelling collaborator, not your ghostwriter. That's why I've invited Pete Pachal, a longtime tech journalist and founder of the Media Copilot, to show you how AI is transforming storytelling from the newsroom to the boardroom, and how you can use it to tell your most powerful story yet. Hello and welcome to the Business of Story. I'm so delighted that you're here. I'm your host, Pachal, and if you've been listening to our show, then you know about our new StoryCycle Genie, which enables you to craft a brilliant brand story strategy unique to your business and market position in record time. And I just want to show something that I found after running about 80 brands through the Genie during our development process. All I did was compared the amount of time it would typically take to create some basic brand narrative assets. And this is based on my 40 years of building brands. I gave that number, the amount of time it takes you, a very, very conservative cost of, say, your time is worth $150 an hour. That's all I threw in there. And that's not including any staff time you might have in building your brand story and or the cost of a branding agency or marketing consultant. That's just your time. I bet your time is actually worth more than $150. Then I compared it to what people are experiencing using the Genie, the amount of time it takes and the actual Genie investment to make that happen. So let's start with, and I'm going to share 6 different assets I created. The first asset is the foundational brand story strategy. This is the big dog. This is everything it is based on. Now, I just said a typical time sink for that, for your personal time, might be 60 hours. Some people have already pushed back on me and said, dude, it's more like 120 hours. But just to be conservative and realistic, let's say you got 60 hours of your time doing that, and your billing rate or your hourly value is $150 an hour. That's $9,000. Well, we did it in the Genie in 1.5 hours, and the Genie investment was only $40. Let's go through this some more. We created 3 audience vertical narrative strategies based off your foundational story. That would typically take 15 hours, and a lot of people argue that would be 15 hours per audience. I'm just going to say 15 hours for all 3 at $150 an hour is $2,250 of your time doing that. In the Genie, collaborating with it, it took 20 minutes, and the cost was only $67. A content playbook, which is your storytelling style guide, I said would take you 8 hours. Again, people have pushed back and said, dude, that's another 40 hours. But let's say 8 hours at $150 an hour is $1,200 of your time. In the Genie, we did it in 10 minutes for $37. A social media plan might take you 16 hours, cost you $2,400 of your time. In the Genie, it took 20 minutes, $18. Homepage content creation that is totally optimized based on your brand story strategy. I have in here, it might take you 8 hours at $150 an hour. That'd be $1,200. In the Genie, it took 5 minutes with your collaboration. $15 is all it cost. Finally, we created an email sequence campaign to launch the new homepage. I estimated maybe 12 hours of your time pulling that strategy together. It cost $1,800. In the Genie was another 5 minutes, or $26. So what does that all equate to? Totals in what we just went through for those very important brand assets would be around 119 of your hours, of 119 hours of your time to create that at $150 an hour is $17,850 of sunk cost. And again, that is incredibly conservative. In the Genie, it took me 2.5 hours, equated to $375 at $150 an hour. And my total investment in the Genie was only $203. So what does that add up to? The old way of doing it would have been $17,850. The new way with the StoryCycle Genie would be $578. And then people wonder, well, if it's so fast and so inexpensive, can it be that good? Yes, because it is based on my 20 years of experience using the StoryCycle system. Proven brand development, intellectual property that has built brands by as much as 600%. So you get no cookie cutter stuff, no general stuff, no hallucinations about your brand story. It is all based on how you are currently showing up in the world, and then enables you to go in and make any tweaks on that story to build what we call the brand brain that the Genie operates from, so that you can create amazing strategy and compelling content that converts, totally based on your brand story, in literally minutes, okay, a couple of hours, versus months and months and months at a fraction of the cost. And these are the numbers, these next ones, that I hesitate to give you because they seem unbelievable. But in the Genie, you use 98% less time creating your brand story and 99% less money, with a phenomenal outcome considering the story elements, strategy, and content it will create for you. But don't take my word for it. Listen to others who have already been through the StoryCycle Genie.
This son of a bitch. I gotta tell you, it is outstanding. So congratulations for what you've built.
When I gave it feedback, I just loved the language that it presented back. It was very conversational. It was very relatable. It was like, that's a great point. I didn't think about that.
I couldn't promote it more to people listening. Like, you got to try this thing out. It's really spooky good.
Honestly, it gave me even more than I anticipated. Like, I don't have a blank slate, so I've got so much to use to work with. It's awesome. Thank you. I'm so glad I was able to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's something that I feel would be useful to anybody who, like me, wants to fine-tune their messaging, wants to ensure that anything they release is on brand. Just the utility of it is off the charts. So I can't wait to get my hands on it.
I love it. I mean, it's genius, right? I mean, what's not to love about it?
You can now start crafting your brand narrative strategy and instantly create content that converts at the StoryCycleGenie.ai. Think of it as your fractional CMO or branding content agency in a bottle. But this CMO, branding content agency, doesn't have to take 6 months to get up to speed on your brand. It might take 6 minutes, if that. So check it out, StoryCycleGenie.ai. Run your brand through it now and launch your campaign in 48 hours. What do you got to lose? And with that, let's welcome to the show, Pete Pachal. Hello, Pete. Welcome to the show.
Hey, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Park. I bet you get that a lot.
That's close enough. I get Bark. I get Bart. I mean, I get everything. Even one time at a Starbucks, I went in and I ordered my coffee and they put it out there and it said Bark on the side of it. And I thought to myself, did that barista really think someone was named Bark? But apparently they did. So it's no big deal. But it's great having you here. We're going to explore media, AI. I mean, we've talked a lot about AI here on the Business of Story around brand development, content creation, that kind of thing. But we've never really explored it in the media world and the implications of, ethics and research and what can you believe and, what do you need to toss out and where you see this world going. So I'm so happy to have you here. And could you give us just a little bit of background on what makes you an expert with the media field and AI?
It's a very good question, and I'm glad you're checking your sources right off the bat. So, yeah, I've been a journalist for my whole career, which I'm almost embarrassed to say how long it is, but for over 25 years, I've been covering mostly technology, which includes AI. So I worked for companies like Mashable, recently at CoinDesk. I also did some time at NBC Universal covering technology. And so I'm very familiar with, the tech world and AI specifically. And when I left CoinDesk and was sort of looking for my next move, AI was fairly brand new. ChatGPT was still new. Actually, one of the last things I did at CoinDesk was figure out their AI strategy. And I knew I wanted to do more with AI, and I knew I wanted to apply that to what I also know almost as well, which is media. And so I founded the Media Copilot, and I was determined to essentially teach myself everything I could about how AI was changing the media profession because it was so clear it was going to. And I was going to pass that on to people who subscribe to my newsletter. And then shortly after that, someone reached out to me, a contact in New York, and said, like, why don't you come in, talk about AI to my team? And I was like, sure, I could do that. And I did. It went super well. I did a couple more sort of off the cuff AI sessions like that. And I realized, there's a lot of good I could do in terms of just helping people get up to speed with what AI is and how to use it. So I launched classes shortly after, and that has rapidly become one of the main things I do, which is educating media people, both journalists, but also PR and communications professionals on how to use AI, what it is, and how it's changing their industries. And so that's continues to be what I cover in the newsletter. The newsletter is still going strong, comes out twice a week. I have a podcast as well. I talk to media leaders mostly, but others too, like builders, people building interesting things with AI, and just honestly continuing that mission. How is AI changing not just the media world, but broadly, like how are people getting information now? That AI is this intermediator or disintermediator, so to speak, because it's one of the big concerns about AI is that it needs good content to give good answers. But now, because people just get the answers, they don't click through the websites, that's kind of changing the way the media business works. And we're still in the process of figuring that out, myself included.
And so people aren't necessarily vetting the information maybe as stringently as they should because they're just believing in whatever AI is giving them.
That's a really good point. That's a problem. I'm going to tell you that right now. It's always been an issue since AI came out because AI quite famously can hallucinate, right? It can get things wrong. Now they're getting better, and they probably don't hallucinate quite as much as they used to, depending on what model you use, et cetera, and all those other things. But it's a problem. Hallucinations are inherent to the technology, and while I could recommend a whole number of ways to mitigate them on both the sort of production side and the audience side, I'm kind of fascinated by the idea of people just kind of putting up with them. Like people know at this point that this occurs, right? That stuff coming out of AI can sometimes be off. I think anyone who's used ChatGPT for more than 5 minutes kind of figures this out. No one has really stopped using ChatGPT over, at least no one in any significant numbers. In fact, ChatGPT use is off the charts, and by proxy, so is all other AIs are growing rapidly. So, what does that say about our world, right? Like, do we have just sort of a larger tolerance for inaccuracy or fuzziness? I kind of wonder, you know, what has to happen in terms of a hallucination disaster, I guess, for us to really start taking it seriously. I think what it shows us is that a lot of AI use or a lot of stuff you kind of just get off the internet that you use the internet for information wise, maybe just isn't all that crucial, like in that, you kind of like, okay, give me some advice for the multivitamin and it gives you some thoughts on it. And it's like, okay, it could be right, could be wrong. But if it's wrong, as long as it's not telling me to like take arsenic, I think I'll be okay, you know?
You bring
And
that up, and we were watching The Liver King last night. Have you seen that crazy documentary about the guy
no,
that's living like the primal man, and he's got ancestral vitamin supplements, and it's all about eating raw liver and raw, cow testicles, and I mean all this disgusting stuff. And he was all beefed up, and he grew a multi-million dollar business doing this, and it turns out he was on steroids the whole time. So it goes back to, and he was just playing to the media environment we all live in right now, that what you see online, what you see on TikTok, these bigger than life personalities seem to be truth. It is what the world believes in. But, it was just a Netflix doc that's fantastic. And it just goes to show you the lengths people will go to not actually share the truth and to make as much money as they can. And that, I think, plays over into AI a little bit. Now, AI, I don't think is, going out of its way to tell you mistruths. It's just is only as smart as what it can pull off the interwebs.
Yeah. Well, AI is never going out of its way to do anything. I mean, this is the thing I constantly instruct people on with AI. Although we have a strong desire to anthropomorphize our technology and ascribe to it human qualities, AI has no intent. There's no there. It's just reflecting back either stuff you tell it or stuff it's read on the internet. It's all just a tool. And I think it's really important because, with AI often, used to do things like write essays or articles, when it's used to create images, there's no spark there, like it's kind of like where we sort of think about the AI created this. No, it didn't. Humans created all the material that it just, imitated, learned from, and then was guided to some extent by the person prompting. So, all of that contributes to it. And so, like, all of this is to say that as a human using AI, you are still responsible. You can, to some extent, take the credit, but you also should take the blame for when something goes wrong, because it's still just a tool. It's not. There's no entity to put on trial if something goes wrong. That's going to be a person.
So let's talk about the media world a little bit and kind of the evolution of it. And I'll be very basic in this. You can take us on the deep dive, but in the past, journalists would go out and they would hit the beat and they would call people up and they would interview people and they would use different sources. And then the internet comes along, and so they can add to their research and discovery capabilities a lot faster through the internet. And now they've got Chat GPT. How are you coaching media to use its strengths and try to overcome its weaknesses?
Yeah, first of all, I really like your story description of the media profession, because that's how it was and was supposed to work for a long time. But I'll just sort of say on a high level right now, I think AI, and this is sort of a bit of a controversial opinion I have, AI is arguably very healthy for journalism, even if it can be painful for journalists individually, because it's correcting to some extent what I would argue is sort of the excesses of the internet and some of the consequences that you sort of alluded to a little bit. So, like you described, yeah, here's how reporting is supposed to work. You're supposed to call up people, get good information from them, do some research, put it all in context, give people a good picture of sort of what's going on in the world for any particular story. For a long time in the 2010s, I would say journalism, in terms of how it's practiced, kind of became something else. And there became something known as like aggregation. And this arose out of different incentives in the media world, just to say, like, oh, everyone's talking about a thing, whether it's an election or a celebrity quote or a TV show. And there's these articles on this thing are getting a lot of attention. Let's just do a bunch of those articles. And it doesn't really matter what the substance is. We'll just re-report something someone else is doing, or have the same Game of Thrones recap that everyone else did. And this was not, I would argue, healthy for journalism. This was not the golden age of journalism. This was when it was algorithmic incentives that kind of ruined journalism success. So anyone who was in that business of aggregation, essentially, you're probably not going to do so well in the AI era, because AI, to some extent, it wasn't really a reaction to this, but what AI can prioritize for is something different. In other words, it changes the incentives of that whole system. And because AI is always looking for original information, new things from credible sources, it doesn't just look at the thing being said, it will look at the site and the person who said it and looking for a pattern there. I do think AI, maybe it's not perfect. I'm not trying to exalt it or anything, but I think it is a better incentive system than the aggregation era, than search engines and social networks, which is what led to that aggregation era. So So on that high level, I think stems the what you're getting at, which is like, well, how do you use it? How do you on sort of the user level, like, what do I do with it? And it's like, well, first of all, think about that incentive structure and then use the AI to fuel it, which is to say, yes, you're going to use AI to probably automate some things, do some rote tasks, certainly help you with research. But that whole thing that you said at the beginning, like do some reporting, call someone up, do some original research, find
Check
nuggets
your
and documents,
sources, right?
checking your sources, that is still going to be human and will remain human for a long, long time. So, in other words, the main thing any journalist should do in using AI, first prioritize journalism, prioritize that fundamental. Like you're not aggregating anymore. Stop, get out of this mindset, which I still see from editors and publications and writers that I talk to. You know, they're all awesome, still not all, but I mean, to a large extent, they're still chasing these kind of clicks and these kind of models, which I understand. As good as AI is, as fast as it's rising, the internet still exists. It still was part of this model for a while. It's kind of a hangover of this era, but mostly like if you are in the game of aggregation at any level, stop. Start doing real journalism again. Start calling people. Start coming up with your own ideas. Yes, use AI to help with all of that, but fundamentally, just reground yourself back into the first principles of the profession,
Yeah.
which is, being credible, having a good track record, having a beat. Don't try to be the 100th Game of Thrones recap site. I know Game of Thrones is not anymore, but you get the point. you know, it's it don't be something unique, offer original information, and AI will I'm convinced at some point AI is going to reward you in some way. And again, we still
Yeah.
got to figure out the systems of rewarding, but they're being figured out. And
Yeah.
journalism will never get obsolete.
Well, and what you just said there too about being a journalist from a human standpoint, first and foremost, is true for any business. Anybody that's using it in our world, in the brand storytelling, sales, and marketing world, is you've got to show up as your individual self first, and you have to have that network of contacts that you have generated and evolved over the years to build your credibility, but only use AI as an additional muscle to maybe help you communicate, but don't let it take away your voice. And now, of course, we're all getting bombarded with AI generated emails, AI generated content online. I saw somewhere, and I don't know if they can pull this off or not, but Google said, and or maybe it was LinkedIn said that it's going to start discrediting you for AI generated content. Now, how it ever knows it's AI generated, I have no idea, but it goes back to what you're talking about is it starts on the human level first.
Yeah, and that's I would probably argue getting technically easier, but like stylistically harder in terms of finding out what's AI and what isn't. But it's also kind of the wrong filter. It is, and it isn't. Like I would say, because of the scale of AI, yes, a great deal of AI content is bad. There is a tiny minority of AI content that is being generated and refined with humans that is actually pretty good. So on a fundamental level, whatever your filter is probably shouldn't filter out the good stuff, even if it is from an AI. The problem is just on a numbers perspective, be, like not all AI content is slop. Slop generally a synonym for low quality AI content, but all slop is generated by AI. So it is a marker, no question. But I'm guilty for using AI to help me write LinkedIn posts myself for sure. I never
But
just throw it up willy nilly, but
why do you say
I'll
you're
refine.
guilty? Yeah, I don't think you're
Yeah,
guilty. It's a way to replace that blank page, that blank stare with some initial thought starting copy, and then you go in and work your magic on it.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's what they want people to do, which is, as long as you have the human element put into it, it'll probably pass whatever test they have. And I I I don't I think this might be obvious, but I've got a little more structure to it. AI content isn't a binary, right? It's not like this is human, this is AI. It really is a spectrum, and it's for most AI systems, if you think about self-driving cars, they usually have like numbers, so they'll rank it from like 0 to 4. So like 0 is total human driving, 4 is total AI driving. Same thing with writing. 0 is fully human, what we were all doing a few years ago. Level 4, where it's just AI written and no one's checking it. Not recommended, but that's a thing you can do. And there's several layers in between. And I'll say most of my writing now is probably level 1 or 2. Certainly level 1, you're doing some research, you're doing some ideation, probably with AI. You could go further with that too and have it be a very specific writing advisor. And I do workshops about that on like how to build a really good writing assistant so that it's there to help you get your own thoughts out of you, but it's not there to write for you. That's a very good unlock in terms of your use of AI. And then you can get level 2 where it's contributing a little bit, but it's still mostly yours. And then there's level 3, which I think is what probably most people think AI writing is. It's like, oh, it's just cranked out and maybe a human wrote the headline or refined something. Again, level 3 can be fine depending on the level of human involvement, but it is primarily AI written with some human contribution. There are ways to do that right and there are ways to do that wrong. So it's not like any particular level other than 4 is wrong. And even that's not like wrong on some moral level. It's just, given the AI's propensity to hallucinate, it's just kind of a bad idea to have it crank out stuff unsupervised.
Pete, with the journalists that you work with, what's like one of the number one questions and or concerns that they pose to you that they're looking for clarity on?
Yeah, good question. Oh, so much. I mean, I think, there's a lot of practical techniques I teach, but they usually don't, some of them, they're good. Don't get me wrong. It's just people want to know the answers to the hard questions. What's going to happen to my job? Is using AI cheating? That's a big one. I get that from PR a lot too, because the sort of probably boundaries on what you can use AI for or can't are probably slightly wider in PR because it's very common. Prior to AI, PR professionals would craft messaging and simply get it approved by executives. That's there's nothing untoward about that. It's just how the business is done. So in using AI in that process where you might not do it in a media environment, I don't see that as a further breach of ethics. But I do get the question a lot from PR teams: is that cheating? And again, it depends. What's the context? Who's the audience? What type of writing is it, etc. The jobs question, I can only give you so much, in terms of like what my impression is. I think one of the truer things someone has ever said about AI, and it's certainly been said by more than a few people, is that the AI is not going to replace you, but someone who can use AI well might. That's that seems certainly true to me. AI is kind of here and it's changing industries whether you like it or not. No one should be sticking their head in the sand and just saying like, well, I'm just going to ignore it or not use it at all. I don't think anyone can afford to do that. Certainly you can go, if you're in charge and in a senior position at these places, I'd say you have a responsibility to make sure the implementation is beneficial and ethical and it doesn't compromise the integrity of any of the informational stuff you do. But you also have a responsibility to give it an honest go and figure out where it can be applied. I think this is less true today in media companies, but I would say early on in the AI wave, the current AI wave, there was a lot of cherry picking to dismiss or basically push aside AI, like, oh, it's not good for that. Oh, it screwed this up or whatever. And I'm not saying any of that was false, but I would say there was a lot of setting it up for failure because it felt like an existential threat. Now, it's no less an existential threat today. It's much better today, but better to leverage and understand that threat than have it sort of wash over you or you know, have it sort of take over in some way. So those are sort of the harder questions people come to me about. And then it comes down to sort of the broader things about like, well, how do I use it properly? Or which model's the best? Which I think there are actual good answers to that. Like even though the models do change, so all of this can change, every few months when there's a new thing. Generally, I would say the bigger models, when we're talking about Meta, OpenAI, Anthropic, are all kind of moving towards certain lanes. And unless there's a massive shakeup internally on one or two of these things, they kind of have their go-to. It's not even quite use case. It's more like vibes. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I think once you use an AI for a while, and you've tried a few others, you kind of get that sense. So I do have some good advice on sort of what to use for what,
What's your
depending on
favorite
what you're doing.
model for writing that sounds the most human?
For a long time, it was Claude Sonnet, and it's still Claude. I just started to use Opus more because there's an Opus. Opus is the big model at Claude, which didn't get a lot of play for the longest time because Sonnet was so good. This is when Sonnet was 3.5, and now that they've integrated, I think, reasoning and thinking in a smart way. I think Opus is probably a better writing partner, even though Sonnet is still very good. This is the Claude 4 models, so that's
And
my
that's
go-to.
Anthropic, right? Anthropic
Right? Yeah.
created a Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that's very good for coding too, but, usually I don't deal a lot with coding. It's just the thing is, we're all gonna be doing some coding though with AI. This is the great thing, like, you can do some amazing things that are essentially coding exercises without knowing any code. Like, it's like, there you hear about vibe coding. Well, you might have already done it. This even if you don't think you have. If you've ever gone to Anthropic, and I do this often with, like, a data set, I'll go, like, I have this big spreadsheet, build a dashboard from the data. That's a coding exercise, and it's very good at it. And you can like iterate on those. Like it'll give you something. You're like, okay, actually, I want a drop down menu for this, and I want to be able to partition it by region or whatever. And it'll do it, and it'll just right in front of you. 2 minutes later, okay, here you go. And so you can create these really custom dashboards on unique data sets, which is a super fun thing. And I find Anthropic is really good at that.
Well, and it's happening all so quickly. When did you start teaching AI to journalists and content creators?
So I started teaching formally in like January 2024. I had done a couple of those things I mentioned earlier where someone just called me up, "Hey, let's come in and talk to my team about it." That was sort of the real that was like November 2023. That was really shortly after I'd founded the company. But I've been a strategic leader at CoinDesk, at Mashable, at Red Ventures. So I've led my share of internal workshops on things like SEO, how-to sessions on doing the CMS. I was always been fairly left-brained, which is probably why I cover tech. And so I would have my own sort of techniques for mastering the CMS at Mashable, for example. We had WordPress for a while, and then we had our own custom one. And when I would show people internally, like some things I do, they're like, "How did you do that? How did you come up with all?" It's like, "Well, it's in the CMS. It's in this menu. It's blah blah." And so then I would sort of end up doing a workshop on some esoteric CMS feature that would help everyone's productivity, and those were fun to do. So when I look at sort of the teaching that I do now for PR teams, for media teams, it's really kind of an outgrowth of that, and an outgrowth of my own enthusiasm for finding things that work for me and wanting to share them.
And you've been a tech reporter for a couple decades, it appears. So have you ever seen any sort of technology grow at the pace at AI is, or I should say advance at the pace of AI? Because it seems like every day something new is available.
Not at this pace. There's been some explosive stuff. So smartphones for sure. The size of smartphones when they got big, that was sort of a strangely surprising at the time. In hindsight, it's like, of course they got big. And social media, again, it was a big change, and that was I sort of hits close to home because that was a big change for media, but it was not that fast. Like if you think about when Facebook came out, it was founded 2004, 2005, was didn't go to the general public until like 2006, 2007. Like that's already think about just the 2 years we've had, 2.5 years we've had AI, right? Facebook wasn't even public to everybody in the first 2 or 3 years. So like this pace is insane. This is totally unprecedented. Like we've had fast stuff before, certainly, and we've had big flameouts before too. Like you remember when live video was the biggest thing on social media for a while there. That rose pretty fast and fell pretty fast. Even though now it's you can just kind of do it. It's just a feature.
Mhm.
But there are there are things that are fads. There are things that grow reasonably fast, but AI is just
Yeah,
blows them all away.
it's mind-boggling, and it's fantastic. We see its expression in business of helping efficiency and speed to market and everything. And with our own StoryCycle Genie, I ran about 80 brands through it, and the numbers come back almost unbelievable because people are like, really? I mean, it literally reduces your time in creating a brand story by 98%. It reduces your costs by 99%. And I think people call BS on that. No, it can't possibly. And if that's the case, it can't be any good. But it is. It's built on an IP that's proven. That is freaking pretty amazing. And where I'm going with this is, while it's really AI in general is helping the pace and efficiency of business, is that same sort of speed in journalism good for journalism, or does it open the Pandora's box that people can say, oh, just more fake news, or just pulling it off of AI, and we know it hallucinates, so you can't trust anything that journalist is telling you?
Yeah, it's very good question and good challenge, and sort of what I said earlier about, AI being good for journalism. The pace of it, no. I would actually argue no, it is not good, because it is very painful and people don't quite know how to use it. Journalists don't know quite how to use it. So there are growing pains here. And they're at every level, not just at where media companies are using it and maybe going wrong. You certainly saw in the early days of AI, people experimenting with AI generated content. That did not go so well, but the use case has not gone away, and people are starting to use it more for that purpose in better ways. But also even at the interface level. So there was a story not too long ago that where Apple had deployed some AI on its iPhone and was summarizing like notifications, and some of these notifications are from news outlets. So pretty famously or infamously, the BBC complained to Apple that, hey, your AI is getting confused, and it's basically just said this guy who is in prison got shot when he didn't, because it got confused about the facts on various things. And so not only is that doing disservice to the reader because it's telling them a shocking, incorrect story, it makes the news outlet look bad because it makes it look
Mhm.
like the BBC said that when it was Apple who said that. So that is not great development for this. Now, again, pain points will happen when there's new technology, when there's new process. But the thing is, you're supposed to get ahead of them. You're supposed to correct, and fortunately, Apple did dial that back, that feature for at least news notifications. But generally, the biggest problem is simply the compensation question, which is to say that if you were whether you're a big outlet or a small outlet, you could even be an individual content creator. What AI does with your content is often obfuscates the standard business models of media, which is like, I get attention by someone coming to my content. And then if they do that and they want to interact with me, I then can have a relationship with that person. AI throws all that away and is like, and in many cases gives the content creator nothing in return. That seems like an inherent flaw, at least of the business model. There's a lot of activity and attention on this aspect in particular. Quite famously, OpenAI is signing a lot of licensing deals so that their publishers are compensated. There's a number of startups that have come out that have essentially proposed systems for measuring that AI activity and then compensating based on it. And there's even more just adjustments that are happening in the industry, which is to say, like, a simple refocusing away from anonymous traffic being part of your business model, right? Which is what most people get from Google, because now that activity, getting information on Google and clicking through, is going to be shrinking over time. All publishers, to some extent, are now putting their focus on other areas, like subscribers, charging for subscriptions, like having events, making money from events, all kinds of other just alternative ways to have a successful business. I would say no one's cracked it. No one has figured out this is the future and this is going to lead to growth and success broadly. Various people are having pretty good luck with this or that, and some people are having bad luck with it. So until something really takes hold, I think in the broader what happens at that layer of bot activity, and can you generate some kind of transaction either between the AI companies and the publisher, or perhaps having micropayments for the end user even, until that's sort of clearer, I think it's still going to be a lot of like throwing spaghetti against the wall.
Mm-hmm. When I was a young copywriter many, 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 many years ago, I had a boss that asked me the question, set me up. He said, Park, what's a newspaper in business for? And I said, well, of course, to tell the news, to report the news. He goes, nope, they're in business to make money. What will keep these large media enterprises to really incorporate building out their own custom, and I'm sure they're already building their own custom GPTs internally for research, story development, and whatever, to make the entire enterprise faster and more efficient and just spew out even that much more news to sell more advertising against. Now, I know that's kind of a dystopian view of it, but human
No,
nature, and like they say, is to make money, survival. So what keeps our media outlets from doing that?
yeah, I don't think it's dystopian at all. I think being a business is essential to the survival of the industry. I don't think news should be some kind of just subsidized thing. I do think you should have an audience and be able to give good information for that audience that they're demanding, and then be able to charge for that. Again, if there's no demand for the information you're putting out there, I mean, I don't know why you would need to should be successful. So that said, I think there are ways to do it, and I think in the broad idea of business models, that what you were largely, I think, alluding to there was sort of like an advertiser-based business model, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
like, people come here and really my business isn't information, it's eyeballs. Like, how many eyeballs can I attract on this? And how can I do that in a consistent way? And I think that's what's been lacking in the last 10 years. Like, there's been so much focus on short-term gains from traffic, from, doing sort of the cynical aggregated content I was talking about earlier, as opposed to, can I consistently get a certain level of audience that is on a sustainable growth path? I see this all the time, honestly, in my podcasting. So I run a couple podcasts, and like most podcasts, I'm both on podcast platforms as well as YouTube. And because YouTube has a very search driven algorithm, you sometimes get spikes on certain videos you put out there, and they'll go up and down, and it can be wildly inconsistent. Whereas on the audio platforms, those tend to be much more sustainable and grow at a steadier pace. And so I honestly look at those audio platforms as a better measure of success, as am I doing a good job for my audience? That does just that's not to say growth isn't important. It is, but I think if it's sustainable growth, it's not going to be wildly all over the place. It's going to be, your 2%, your 5%, your 10% per whatever, cycle. And so I think that's how a lot of media companies need to sort of get in the habit of doing. I think there's so much muscle memory that's been put on those spikes, and like, let's get all the audience we can for this short period for this news thing. Well, are you putting out value over time? Find those metrics that show that you have people coming back and there's good word of mouth, and that your writers are getting more audience, and your franchises are getting more audience over time, and just keep investing in those and resist sort of the shiny thing, whatever it is. And I think in terms of AI sort of helping with that, it's really, I think some of these, well, first you could obviously help on the production side and make your people more efficient, and you can do more with less. But I would say one of the things you were sort of getting at there is like what you might call like hyper personalization, right? And I hate the term hyper, but it's like one of these marketing things that everyone sticks in front of everything. But it is more personal than before, because before personalization amounted to, okay, you're on the site, maybe they know you, maybe they don't, but from your behavior, it's like, well, maybe you like these other articles, and that was sort of the extent of it. I think the AI does present a much better, bigger opportunity to reach people in not just with the content they'd be interested in, but in the format they'd be interested in. So, I know people, and I'm kind of one myself, like, I'm a podcast guy. I love listening to podcasts, but a lot of stuff is only in article form. So stage one of sort of satisfying a user like me is like, oh, just do an audio article. And there's a lot of people that do that now, right? The Times, the Post, the Wall Street Journal all have audio articles. Well, what about an audio version of not just an article, but a set of coverage around a topic? And then, just create like, all this stuff about what it could be something in the news, like tariffs or something. And it's like, well, there's been a bunch of stories this past day. I want a 20-minute podcast that I can listen to while I do the dishes or go for a run that encapsulates it all and is accurate and has some friendly voices and is something that I might even want to share. So AI can 100% do that. Like it's already being
Notebook
done.
LM.
Yeah,
Notebook
Notebook
LM's an
LM
example of it.
and there's a couple media companies that are just starting to do this kind of thing. Like Time now has a daily audio update. Business Insider's doing it too. We'll see how they do. But again, you don't have to constrain yourself to just podcasts. What if I'm for whatever reason, I'm a TikTok doom scroller and I just want to like flip up 5 videos to give me the news of the day? You can do that too with either B-roll, AI generated B-roll, though there's ethics for doing that in media certainly, or just AI generated talking heads, and they could be clones of your reporters, right? And we're seeing some people starting to experiment with that. Like, if you are the reporter, you might want to, it might be better to come directly from you. The New York Times has seen some really good success with doing this manually, essentially having the reporter talk about their stories on things like the Daily, or even just do the audio version of it. Well, if you clone the person's voice, there's no reason you couldn't have an audio version of every article they've ever written. So all of this becomes a possibility. And so again, back to that hyper personalization thing, I can get stuff when I want it or when I want it. You could say you should be able to tell like when I interact with your brand or my demographic interacts with your brand. So maybe you could push news to me at the time that I am most receptive of getting that news. And all the other factors around the content and everything around the content will theoretically make me a much stickier customer of your media brand.
Yeah. And so you also work with, as you were mentioning, PR firms and content creators. Pete, what are like the top 3 things you would recommend to our listeners right now if they haven't really dived into AI yet, or maybe have just kind of skimmed the surface? What are the 3 things you might have them go and look at to really start getting familiar with it, using it, and getting a sense of where they think it's going to go?
Yeah, I would say in terms of your usage, like pick a tool and build an assistant. And all the tools have ways to do this, right? So how do you build an assistant? Like something specific to you? You give it very specific prompting, and it doesn't even have to be that detailed, but just kind of telling it the way you want responses, the things you're interested in, your profession, customize that and get a sort of set of instructions around the most common things. And then give it context, right? Give it your very your very specific information about you and your job. And so with that, you'll be able to do so much more within just out of the box AI. So build an assistant, and it could be a custom GPT, it could be a Claude project, it could be a Perplexity space or something. So start there and start looping in that assistant on more things, and not just like writing a tweet for you or something. Like loop it in on a problem. Like figure it out that the output, like what we all used to think of as AI a year or 2 ago, which was like, "Hey AI, give me this thing." Like we all thought of AI as Santa Claus, right? It was all like, "I want an essay, give me an essay. I want an image, give me an image." Or just give it to us, and we'd sort of judge it. Ah, that sucks. I'll do it again. And really, the better unlock on using AI is use it as a collaborator. Bounce things off it. Don't expect perfection, but do expect a longer conversation. So it's like, okay, I'll need to think through this thing I'm going to do, whether it's an article or a business strategy or what have you. What am I missing? What am I overlooking? Also, be critical AI. Don't just reflect back my own thoughts to me. Like, tell me what I'm missing here, how I can improve things. And so keep using AI in this collaborative way, and you'll start looping it in for more and more stuff. I would also just say, as an adjunct to that, do it verbally. Like verbal interactions with AI are fabulous. Like they're just much more natural. It can understand you and weed out like your rambling thoughts, and you can even tell it within your rambling thought, like, oh no, ignore that, what I just said, and do this instead. It's actually really good at that. It still needs to get a little better at understanding when you're making a pause as opposed to done your thought. There are certain sort of human cues it just isn't totally aware of, but it's going to get better. So yeah, those would be my top 3, to be honest with you. It would be build an assistant, use it collaboratively, and use it verbally. And once you're doing that, you're going to create AI habits and just have that intelligence, that interpretive layer on more things, which will help a lot. Like I often talk about the stages of information usage. And what I mean by that is like, well, it took us a while with after the dawn of the internet to sort of figure out how to use Google. Like basically just, oh, whatever's out there, just Google it. And by the mid 2000s, that's all we everyone figured that out. And then I think the next stage was kind of YouTube, right? It was like, well, now I don't just need information. I need someone to actually walk me through how to do a thing. And it took a little while, but every video of anyone doing anything I find is on YouTube. Doesn't matter how remote the feature or weird the repair or whatever it is, it's all on YouTube there for someone to walk you through it. So everyone got used to go, oh, I'll just go to YouTube to find out how to do things. And now with AI in our pocket, we have this interpretive ability on all of that. So it's like cut to the chase and just give me the answer I want. Just I don't want to sift through stuff. Like you do it, robot, and you just tell me the thing I need to know. And again, that's sometimes straightforward and sometimes it's an iterative process. It's a conversation. Like, no, I don't like that. I like this. Oh, actually, I was thinking more like this. But I don't have to do anything other than talk to the AI. So that's the change we're in now. And once we emerge on the other side of it, I mean, who knows? It's going to be
Yeah.
there's a wildly different world of people never going to websites and just getting answers.
Well, it really is. And I ran your brand through the StoryCycle Genie. And Pete, all I did was gave it your URL and I gave it your LinkedIn profile. And in about a minute and a half, it gave me that brand assessment of here's how he's showing up in the world. And then it created the whole brand narrative strategy based on our StoryCycle system of this is the way he talks to the world. Here are his customers. Here are their challenges, fears, frustrations, and aspirations they communicate against and whatever down to UVPs, brand archetypes. I sent that over to you. When you looked at it, did you feel like it was accurate? Did it give you
Yeah.
any sort of insight, or what was your take on that output of first that short little brand assessment and then the longer overall story cycle report?
I thought it was great. It was surprisingly good at finding the many dimensions of what I do, which I thought it was very smart output of that. Because sometimes, the AI can sort of get zero in on like one thing, whether it's my teaching or my newsletter or my history as a journalist, and then sort of over index on that. But I thought this was a pretty good, it's sort of pretty good at staying at the sort of helicopter hover level, and then just like it does a bunch of things. And like I thought it was a fairly comprehensive picture of me, my business, and what I'm trying to do with Media Copilot. Also, because I serve a couple of different constituencies, so my roots are in media, but I have a lot of relationships with PR firms and did a little PR work in my time. I find that I'm very sympathetic to the issues they have, and obviously, big parts of my business are talking to them. In fact, I've just launched with my partners a more comprehensive system to accelerate AI adoption by corporate comms teams. So in the classes up until now, I still do a lot of classes that are either a single session or multi-session, and those are great for individuals. But we found like for bigger teams, there is a there's different demands, and different things you have to think of organizationally. And we were just sort of launched packages for those. So understanding those different constituencies, I thought the assessment did a great job.
And it boiled it down. It created a position statement that kind of encapsulated all you do. I'm curious how accurate it is. It said the Media Copilot is the only AI education platform led by a veteran journalist with 20 plus years of newsroom experience, providing vendor neutral, industry specific training that helps media professionals implement AI tools effectively while maintaining editorial integrity and professional standards.
Yeah, I mean, nailed it. I mean, I love that. Honestly, I might take that because,
It's all yours.
well, it encapsulates a few things that I probably do a bad job of highlighting or just don't highlight enough. Like the vendor neutral stuff, I take very seriously because I for big parts of my journalism career, I managed evergreen content and product reviews. And there is a very clear set of ethics you need to have to be doing that, right? You can't be showing favor, and the financial relationships have to be pretty strict on terms of advertising and compensation. So I think about this all the time. Like when I'm teaching classes on AI, like what are people just going to think I'm shilling for any particular tool or AI, right? And I don't, to be clear. It's not like I have nowhere. Like sometimes there's an affiliate relationship, which is a little different, than someone paying me to put their stuff in their class. But that's like it's based on my recommendations. And honestly, I don't even do much affiliate. So I really try to like, okay, this is the best tool for this job. And if there's a transaction that happens that's completely separate from that. I would never ever recommend anything that is like this is bad, but someone's paying me for a thing.
Yeah.
So that's important. And so the vendor neutral stuff and just making sure, like I say, those constituencies are all covered, and that the fact that I'm a veteran journalist and understand how journalists think matters a lot to folks in PR and comms, because it just gives that level of authenticity to um, giving them good advice on how to reach people and do their jobs better.
So, and then it boiled it down to your unique value proposition, which is transforms media professionals into confident AI implementers. You were to boil it down to a simple little phrase, 2, 4, 6, 7 words. Does that capture what you do?
I've never heard it quite said that way. AI implementers, but yeah, I think that's true because it's all. Man, it feels like it was really thorough because I do a lot of tools that are like empowering on an enthusiast level. So like I'll certainly give like prompts and like, here's how to do some basic sort of custom GPT stuff. But I'll also get pretty advanced. So like, look, if you're an enthusiast about this and if you really want to go further with it, build your own tools. And here are some great platforms and techniques on how to do that. So that's how I would sort of define implementer, so to speak.
Mhm.
Like, that's what it's all about. It's like if you can get an unlock for your personal work, like not just some off the shelf AI, but you've built a tool, you've customized it with your own context, and you've really iterated on the prompting, that's when you're going to like just unlock stuff massively. Like and obviously I do this with a lot of different aspects of what I do, whether it's my podcasting, my writing, the teaching business. I've got lesson planner assistants and all that stuff so that I can, practice what I preach. I dog food all this stuff and pass on the best stuff to my students. It's been
Yeah.
great.
Well, and that's what we've done with the Genie is we've spent almost 2 years developing and prompt engineering it on the IP so that it will go in, use behavioral marketing techniques, research techniques to be able to pull up how you are currently showing up in the world. And what we found is it validates what you're already doing well. Like, oh, yeah, nailed that. Oh, got that. Yep, that means that it's being communicated well. It highlights gaps. Like, well, it didn't really say anything about this, or it didn't really lean into this that I do, which probably means it's not being communicated effectively in your own materials. And then it inspires you with new, fresh ways to think about your brand. Like, sounds like maybe that position statement and or the unique value proposition did both of those for you. And then you could go into the Genie and you can work with it, as you said, be a creative collaborator with it and tell it where it hit it, where it missed it, nuances you want, and so forth. And you end up building a brand brain so that it knows you and your company. And then it builds 3 narrative strategies for your top 3 audiences and then puts that in a complete content playbook. So now you have it to build all of your social media strategy and your content based on your voice and the intel that is now locked down with inside the Genie.
Yeah, that's incredible. I love all the dimensions that you guys have thought about with regard to like how it can help once it sort of has the right assessment. And I think that it's like it's all sounds like it's just an inherently comprehensive and iterative tool, right? And again, that's kind of the best way to use AI as you have this collaborative, not just a general off the shelf collaborator, but one that is very mission focused, and has all the right context. So yeah, super smart.
Awesome. Well, Pete, where can people learn more about you? And if they're interested in taking some of your classes and courses, where should we send them?
They should definitely go to mediacopilot.ai. That's the first destination, and you'll find links to everything. So the classes, the consulting, my newsletter, my podcast. And if you're on Substack, that's where my newsletter goes out from. So you can just search for Media Copilot there, or just reach out to me, Pete at mediacopilot.ai, and be happy to chat, even if it's just about how AI has never done anything for you and it's the devil or something. I'm happy to listen to you and hopefully persuade you that maybe it can do at least one or two things for you.
Yeah. Well, Pete, I appreciate your time. Great wisdom shared here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Park. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this edition of the Business of Story. And if you are ready to define and refine your brand story, then head over to StoryCycleGenie.ai. That's StoryCycleGenie.ai. And think of it as your fractional CMO and/or branding content agency in a bottle. But the beautiful thing is, it's not going to take them 6 months to get up to speed on your brand. It might take 6 minutes, if that, and then start crafting a lucrative brand narrative strategy, a complete content playbook, and all of the content you can imagine, all fed by your brand new, brilliant brand brain. At the StoryCycle Genie. Check it out, StoryCycleGenie.ai. And join me next Monday when Sean Schroeder, one of my co-creators of the StoryCycle Genie, will be here, and we're going to walk through the 10 major elements you have to think about in all of your brand storytelling, and of course how the Genie can help you craft those in minutes, not months, at a fraction, and I'm talking pennies, or a fraction of a penny on the dollar than the old traditional way of brand story development. So check it out next Monday. And until then, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is a story you tell yourself. So make that one epic. Thanks so much for listening.